One question.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, some members here are very lucky. I am talking of the new constituencies which were created in 2013. In my constituency, Mwingi West, there is no single registration center on this. What is the ministry doing to ensure that these constituencies, at least members don't have to go to other constituencies to access the same service? Thank you.
Minister, you may answer those, and just before you do that, allow me, in case we have held these students for too long, we acknowledge the presence of students from Mamangina Senior School in Kikuyu, Kiambu. They are in the public gallery, and in the speaker's gallery we have St. Albert the Great, Siakago Boys High School, Mbere North in Embu. You are welcome to the House of Parliament. Minister Hall, I give a member for Lamu East. And who is out of order, Madam Chelule, to run across the floor with your hand raised.
Nafasi nami ni muulize waziri, ana mipango gani kwa wakazi wanaoishi mbali na ambapo hawana maofisa wala hawana hizo ofisi. Mtu kama wa Kiunga inamgharimu shilingi 1400 kutoka Ishakani mpaka Kiunga shilingi 300, Kiunga Tumkokoni ndio upande boat ni shilingi 700, boat ya Mirau ukipanda from Kokoni kufika Mokoe ambao kuna ofisi ni shilingi 3000. Njia moja ni 1400 kurudi, 1400, 1800 kwenda kutafuta birth certificate. Sehemu kama hizo una mipango gani ambao hazina hizo ofisi? Paka tuje maeneo bunge mengine ndo tutafute hizo huduma. Asante bwana Speaker.
Let's have the answers now. Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, one of the priorities for us as a ministry is institutional reforms within the security sector, immigration, citizen services, prisons, correctional services. As I began by saying earlier this afternoon, Honorable Speaker, we admit that the rate at which and the efficiency at which government services are being rendered is not satisfactory. And therefore, we have considered that institutional reform, organizational culture change is a priority for all the departments within our ministry. I therefore want to accept the critical sentiments that have been raised about our performance, and we are working very hard to make sure that we do better. And going forward, this administration will be more than happy to report progress made on each and every sector. We have instituted baseline surveys for each and every service that we are offering, so that every 3-6 months we can be able to track progress. Having said so, Honorable Speaker, the Leader of Majority did ask whether we are remaining with the printing of documents or we are going digital. Honorable Speaker, the policy of government is to digitize all the services that it offers. I can report, as we speak, 5,771 services are partially digitized, out of which 3,293 services across government have been digitized end to end, and the other 2,498 are not partial, they are not end to end. The total is 5,771, 2,498 partially, 3,293 completely. So that is the policy. Digitization, Honorable Speaker, will come with its challenges, but it's a decision this government has taken to proceed that way. However, Honorable Speaker, that does not take the words that I spoke earlier, that still, as we wait towards complete digitization, we must continue producing and giving services, because our mothers are still giving birth as we speak, as we wait for this process to be consummated completely. And therefore, we are intended to make sure we satisfy the demand. I want to assure members will make progress. The Honorable Member for Gilgil asked for timelines. On 27th of March this year, which is 3 weeks ago, we initiated a rapid response initiative at the CRS, and therefore we're expecting 90 days that issue of shortage to be addressed, even as we wait for digitization, as well as the issue of equipment modernization. Honorable Speaker, a question has been raised on remote and far-flung areas, the example given by the member for Lamu East. I'll be visiting Lamu East next week for 2 days, and I think the example the member has given is an urgent priority, and I think we should be able to open a registration center in Kiunga as a matter of priority, because the need as described here is quite unique comparing to other parts of the country. I want to commit to the member and to the House that we're going to open a registration center there. Honorable Speaker, also, even as we continue with the digitization, we will still need registration centers. At the moment, out of the 369 sub-counties, in implementation of the motion passed by this House earlier on, we have civil registration centers in 137 sub-counties, meaning we are less than half. But we are continuing to open new ones on a needs basis. My PS for Citizen Services, I sent him to open one in Kajiado 1 month ago, and I think he's opening another one in Kobo, I think in a month's time. And this will be resolved as we continue to make sure that every sub-county has a civil registry. Honorable Speaker, also, the issue raised by the member for Mwingi West, I think Mwingi West is also an area which requires special measures, and I think we'll put it in our priority. Subject to resources, we will ensure that an area that like Mwingi gets that center also opened. I want to commit to the House that at least the ones that have been identified on the floor of this House by members, in the next 2 months, there will be a civil registration center, including the one raised about Wajir. Honorable Speaker, on this question and earlier on, a question was raised about administrative units. About 80 sub-counties were gazetted just before last election, and they are not operational. We do not have the resources to operationalize all those sub-counties. So what we have decided is to stagger the operationalization of all the gazetted sub-counties in a 3-year period, starting June this year. And the criteria we will use is the nature of hardship and inconveniences to service delivery, as well as regional balance, so that the first criteria of the 20 to 25 sub-counties to be operationalized this financial year starting June will take care of regions, but also hardship, size, population, and all the other factors. We'll come up with a criteria which will be fair and which can be shared to members if they want to know what criteria we will use to identify those that will come first, and then second, and then the third financial year. Honorable Speaker, I can also report to the House that areas where assistant chiefs and chiefs have not been recruited, my PS for internal security has already approved the recruitment process, and therefore we expect all those positions to be filled in the next 90 days across the country. Honorable Speaker, then I think again a question was asked between technology and what we are doing in the old fashion. Going forward, before cabinet is a policy brief, is a cabinet brief which is under consideration on the UPI, the Universal Personal Identifier. And I think in the next 1 or 2 weeks it will be disposed of, so that we migrate, we converge 2 things. One, that every child in Kenya gets a universal personal identifier at birth, which becomes their number in school, their whatever number they require. And when they are 18, that number is the ID number. Then at the same time and in parallel, another universal personal identifier for adults who are getting IDs. So you have a universal personal identifier at birth, and for the existing, because that one, by the time the first adult will use the UPI, it will be 18 years from when we commence. But in the meantime, we are migrating, we are considering, subject to approval by cabinet, migrating the current ID we have into a 4th generation ID, which is the UPI for adults, which of course will take away the question of Huduma number, which was not solving the kind of problems that we intend to solve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, about single mothers who cannot produce the fathers of the children's IDs.
Honorable Speaker, it is no longer a requirement of the law for a registration of a child to include both parents. It is not a requirement. It is now possible to register one parent if you are a one-parent child. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Honorable members, will move to question 105 of 2023. Member for Mandera South.
Here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 105 of 2023. Could the Cabinet Secretary, 1, state the measures being taken to establish civil registration centers in every sub-county in the country so as to ease access to civil registration services? 2, state the measures the ministry is putting in place to immediately set up a civil registration at Elwak and Kutulo sub-counties in Mandera South to serve the huge population in the region, considering that the closest civil registration center to Mandera South constituency is located nearly 220 kilometers away from Mandera town and also serves Mandera North, Mandera West, Banisa, and Lafe constituencies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister, this is nearly similar to the question of Mother Wangari, so we shouldn't spend too much time on this. Answer the question, and I'll allow one bite by the member who asked and one more member. Go ahead, Minister.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, just as I have told the House on the issue of operationalization of the administrative units that are gazetted and not operational, we are finalizing a criteria which will help us implement the recommendations of this House in the motion which was cited by the Honorable Member for Gilgil, to make sure that every sub-county has a civil registry. So what we've done is that we have taken the remainder of all, we have taken the list of all the sub-counties that do not have a civil registry, and we want to implement, because there are quite many, unlike the sub-counties, we want to implement that motion in the next 5 years, but based on a criteria. That criteria, just as in the first case with sub-counties, will be as follows. First of all, those that will get centers, because right now, Mr. Speaker, if I can explain this for half a minute, At the moment, we are opening these centers on the request of individual members of parliament. Like I cited the Kajiado North, it was a request by the MP. I cited Imenti South. The member for Imenti South, who can confirm, is the one who wrote and requested for a center. And we felt that perhaps we should have an objective criteria so that, again, we make sure that that implementation of the recommendation of this House is done fairly, equitably, and making sure that every part of the country is covered. So the criteria will involve, first of all, regional diversity, so that we pick in the first year, every region of our country will be represented in those that will be open this year, but also special and unique circumstances like topography, hardship, population, and so forth. Going forward, to avoid, complaints, public complaints, at a future date, now that this tradition of ministers appearing before the House has begun, I'll be more than happy later on, when the opportunity happens, to provide an update to the House where we are, the criteria we are using. By that time, we'll have adopted it, and then the rollout to ensure that no part of the country is favored and no part of the country will be left out. In fact, on the Wajir issue, generally northern Kenya, upper eastern, upper coast, pastoral areas generally, I think special attention will be given to those areas because I have been there and I know it is quite challenging when one has to travel, as was the case raised by the member for Lamu East. You use 10,000 shillings to go and look for a birth certificate. Another Kenyan is using matatu and paying 50 bob to and fro. But all these factors will be taken into consideration because we want an equitable country and a country where public policy is informed by objective criteria. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I thank the Minister for the answer. Probably most of the answers that I would have wanted had been preempted in the previous question.
I feel the same.
Yeah. So, but I will say, first of all, we have dwelled so much on birth certificates, but a functioning civil registration center and service actually has three very important events. That is registration of births, registration of marriages, and also registration of deaths. And even if we go digital, Mr. Speaker, sir, even if we go digital, you know, registration alone is not enough because the Civil Registration Service has to provide the certificate as a proof of that registration. And that is why we are asking for physical facility and officers who would be in those centers. To put what I'm, particularly in my constituency, when I mentioned Elwak and I mentioned Kutulo, those are two sub-counties in one constituency, vastly, you know, spread apart. Mandera town, where the civil registration center is, the only civil registration center we have in Mandera County, is 220 kilometers from Elwak. And I'm sure the cabinet secretary knows the problems that are there traveling between Elwak and Mandera, especially with the menace from those bad guys from across the border. That road has been a very risky road, especially when you are traveling between Elwak and Mandera, and also between Kutulo and Elwak. So you travel 220 kilometers, and the only bus...
Honorable member, you are now making a speech.
Okay, the only bus that you use for transport between two is the bus that comes from Nairobi. That's what you wait for, so that you can hike it to Mandera. So my plea to the cabinet secretary is that a sub-county like Elwak and Kutulo, which are some of the oldest in that region, surely require civil registration centers very urgently because of the importance of those certificates that the Honorable Mother Wangari had mentioned earlier. You know, the name is, if you want to travel with your child from Mandera now, You cannot take that child on the flight if they don't have a birth certificate. And this all is a challenge, and we require those documents in Mandera. I think the answers that have been given, the usual answers that we hear when government gives answers to, lack of facilities, lack of officers, lack of funding. These are answers which...
Honorable Harrow, you are debating.
Okay, sir.
I gave you an opportunity to ask a supplementary if you feel your question was not sufficiently answered.
So what the Honorable Cabinet Secretary mentioned that some of the initiatives come from the MPs. And I have the benefit of having a copy of his written answer. And he had mentioned of partnership between the Member of Parliament and the national government offices on the ground. I would want to know what would that partnership look like? How does it manifest itself? Because we would really want to initiate those initiatives and see what that partnership can do to help our people on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Kindiki, one question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the PS for the confidence he has answered our questions, but I have a problem, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issuance of passports. There are some questions that I think that form need to be reviewed, particularly on the fathers, mothers, and even the children, some of who could be deceased. I don't see the relevance for that. Two, there is so many migrants who have come to this country purporting to be experts in various fields. They have been given permit to work in Kenya. Even some of them have no technical expertise, taking jobs for Kenyans who are even very qualified. What is this that the ministry is doing to ensure that we don't have hawkers coming here purporting to be expert in various fields? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Julius Sunguli. 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to ask the minister to confirm whether the answer he gave about birth certificates also applies to forms for registration of persons. Because as far as Kilgoris is concerned, there has been no registration, fresh registrations of persons for nearly 6 months now, and the reason being that there are no forms. What is the minister going to do to ensure that those forms are available? And attached to that, Mr. Speaker, if the minister could confirm, could explain what he means by operationalizing new administrative areas when in fact it is members of parliament through CDF who build these facilities. All he does is to post people there. And could he remove Kilgoris from, Transmara West district from those districts that require vetting, because we do not border any international, we don't have an international border. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Kilome.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity. Mine is just very brief, and this one goes direct to the CS. I had a serious meeting with the CS for the last, like around 60 days, and they promised me that this is Kilome constituency, Bwana CS. You promised me I will get a registrar in my constituency because I already have the office. So I would just want to make a follow-up on the same. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Last on this, Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also wish to congratulate the CS for the questions and answers he has made. Mr. Speaker, mine is just almost on the same issue of registration centers. Mr. Speaker, I would wish the CS to consider whether in those areas where there are no registration centers, to make mobile registration, so that those people who cannot, or by the time the government puts money to build offices and send officers there, people should be able to access those particular registration centers. Speaker, and secondly,
one at a time.
Speaker, secondly, on the question of boundaries, areas that are bordering international countries, where we have serious vetting and actually denying people to get their IDs, can they also remove Murwadikir from that list of constituencies which are bordering either Tanzania or other countries? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Can we stop here on this question, members? Yes, Minister, answer those supplementaries.
Sorry, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on the last issue, which has been raised by a member for Murodikil and another member earlier on, the government takes the view and has decided that vetting is a discriminative process which exposes citizens from certain parts of the country to unduly difficult procedures. Of course, the reason why this policy has been there is for good reasons. It's for our national security. Where you have large threats, then you need to be a bit careful so that you minimize security threats through the registration of our citizens. However, we have come up with a modality of ensuring that all critical documents from passports, IDs, birth certificates, all critical documents must be supplied within 21 days, irrespective of where the applicants come from. Where possible, they can come out in 3 days, in 7 days, in 10 days, but no Kenyan should wait for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years to get an ID or a passport simply because they come from a certain part of the country. Therefore, within the next 3 months, the policy of vetting in all the citizen registration services will be abolished and replaced with a new way of ensuring that all registration documents are achieved by all Kenyans within a maximum of 21 days. Honorable Speaker, the issue of vetting, actually, I was in Moyale, and I came across Kenyan youths who had been waiting for IDs for 3 years and 2 months. About 10 young people from Moyale. They applied when they were 18, now they are 21, and they are still waiting. Why? Vetting. We are still, NIS and other institutions are still verifying certain things. This is unacceptable. We are going to abolish that. Honorable Speaker, the member for Kilome, it is true, I agree, Honorable Speaker, I committed to the member who came to my office that we will post a civil registration officer there, but I asked him to support, and that also ties with the question the member asked, what kind of support is this the CS is talking between the national government and CDF? Where the member through CDF is able to obtain consent to build the office, then we give staff and of course the resources that are tied to making sure the office is operational. And that is what we are calling operationalization for the member for Kilgoris. Because even if it's built by CDF, CDF is also public money, okay? But the unit is not operational because the Ministry of Interior must post an officer and give that officer money in the budget to run the office. You can build an office and it's not operational because, one, there is no staff, or you have staff who have no budget to run the office. Honorable Speaker, therefore, in response to the member for Muradikil, member for Kilgoris, and other members, vetting will not only be abolished in those constituencies, but across the country. And for the member for Kilome, Now that the office is complete, I will post a civil registrar in Kilome on Monday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Joseph Kithure, you have 2 questions in a row. Minister, indulge him to ask both at the same time. They seem to be related to security issues. So ask question 106 and 107.
Together.
Together.
Thank you, Speaker. I wish to ask question 106 of 2023, where I'm asking the Cabinet Secretary.
Minister, note that there are 2 questions coming at the same time.
Number 1, clarify whether occurrence book numbers OB number 10-11-01-2022 at 18:05 hours and 07/9/05/2022 at 11:25 hours reported at Kagumo Police Station, and OB number 14/24/9/2022 and OB number 09/10/12/2021 reported at Kavonge Police Post in the name of one Laban Rukenya Munene related to the same person. Number 2, explain under what circumstances did the above mentioned person, with all the 4 entries in the occurrence book, has only been arrested once and failed to attend court for case number 3356/22, despite having a warrant of arrest in his name. Number 3, state the reason as to why the said person was released from Kagumo Police Station in September 2022, despite having serious pending cases against him. Mr. Speaker, I also want to ask question 107, 2023, whereby I'm asking the Cabinet Secretary to explain the measures the Ministry has instituted to address the emergence of criminal gangs and groups with terror rings affiliated to terror groups in the country, including actions being taken against those that are facilitating with rings or sponsoring such groups. Number 2, describe the strategies the ministry has put in place to deal with the emergence of criminal gangs in major towns of Nakuru, Nairobi, Mombasa, and other towns, in particular criminal gangs known as Wechame militia group that is terrorizing residents in Kagumo town in Kirinyaga Central. Number 3, explain the security measure that the minister has put in place to address rampant insecurity incidences in Kirinyaga town, especially along Meringaere Road and Kemore area. I submit.
Minister, I think those are related questions from the same area, and we can be done in 20 minutes on this.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the question raised by the member for Kirinyaga Central regarding the suspect Laban Rukenya Munene, I would like to respond as follows. That yes, the four entries to the OB at Kagumo Police Post and Kabonde Police Post relate to one person, namely Laban Rukenya Munene. This is a suspect of crime who is awaiting prosecution before the Baricho law courts and is accused of stealing on various dates stole from a victim called Mary Karua Nagashoki, twice actually. On a third occasion, the same Rukenya, the same Munene stole from a Mr. John Rukenya, and on another occasion he stole from a Miss Jemima Wangeshi. The suspect was arrested on 3rd of April 2022 and arraigned before the Baricho Law Court under criminal case number 356 of 2022. However, the suspect was released by court on bail. The suspect subsequently jumped bail and is on the run. And the government and the prosecution and security agencies have no control over who the court gives bail or not. So the prosecution tried to oppose the granting of bail, but the court ruled against the prosecution. The bail was granted, and when the suspect was admitted to bail, he jumped bail and is now on the run. The prosecution went back to court and obtained a warrant of arrest, and we are still looking for this suspect. The security agencies are yet to track him down, but I want to assure the member for Kirinyaga Central and the House that criminal investigations, criminal matters are never closed, and therefore we are actively looking for these suspects with a view to arresting them in line with the arrest warrants in our possession, and also to produce them in court for prosecution. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the next question from the same member, parliamentary question number 107 of 2023, I would like to respond as follows. That sometimes at the middle of last year, there was an increasing incidents. There were increasing incidents of urban crime. The most affected urban center was Nairobi. And by the time this administration was sworn into office, around mid-September, there was a huge crisis in this city arising out of terror gangs, gangs of youths, knife-wielding, some armed with pistols, other crude weapons, terrorizing people, robbing people day and night in many parts of the country. We have been able to contain that problem in Nairobi drastically by change of command, but also by change of strategy and deployment, by using special units within the National Police Service. And by and large, I think I am happy that crime has come down by nearly more than 60%, if not more, based on the statistics we are getting, and that matter is under control. But we are also aware there have been some criminal gangs terrorizing people in Nakuru, a gang called Confirm. We have been able to neutralize that threat because 3-4 months ago, it was a real menace. We've been able to arrest the ringleaders, and some of them have been arraigned in court. And right now, I think the situation is under control, and I can also report in the process we had to change again the command of Nakuru County to make sure that we inject fresh leadership and a new team, because sometimes when officers stay in one area for some time, they become a bit lethargic, and that's why we have a policy that no officer, no commander should stay in one station for more than 3 years, to allow them not only serve the whole country and the variety of the entire country, but also to ensure that they don't get involved in local communities and start being lethargic and not become the professionals they are supposed to be. The strategies, therefore, that we are applying to deal with this problem of organized gangs include intelligence-led investigations, which are working very well. But unfortunately, the downside, Honorable Speaker, is that intelligence-led investigations take a little time. But whenever we zero in on a suspect, we have enough evidence, enough intelligence, enough evidence that can be able to help us deal with the core of that issue. In fact, this is the approach we are using in the area issue of banditry. As we speak, we have on our radar very, very high-ranking suspects within the banditry networks. We believe we have enough information, and perhaps once we start striking on the network, the thing will come down. But you know, we needed to take a bit of time to be sure that we have the right information that can help us nip the problem in the bud. Other than that, we are investing heavily, Honorable Speaker, on special units so that to allow police on general duties to concentrate on general maintenance of law of order. But where you have organized crime, organized gangs, banditry, terrorism, trafficking in drugs, and other sophisticated crimes, we are using formed units, including the Rapid Deployment Unit, including ASTU for livestock, the Anti-Stock Theft Unit, including SOG, the Special Operation Group, which has done a great job in neutralizing some of the most complicated security threats, especially in the counter-terrorism effort, and also including SWAT, which is the Special Weapons team that deal with urban close-range crime prevention and crime combating. And we have SWAT teams for men and women officers who do not operate in uniform, and they're really helping us a big deal in containing urban crime. And based on the information that the member has raised about Kagumo town, I am going to personally discuss with our police command in Kagumo so that we put in place a program to make sure that, as we have done in Nairobi, as we have done increasingly in Nakuru, we also exterminate that criminal gang before it takes over Kagumo town, because this country must be a country where citizens are free and they are not living under the terror of criminals. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, CS, for the elaborate answer for the two questions. Mr. Speaker, this question came a while back, and I want to confirm to the CS that after this issue came, when it was mentioned here in Parliament, the guy, Laban, has already been arrested, and Kangware people are happy. He has been arrested. He was arrested on Monday. That is Easter Monday. So the court will deal with that case. On the other issue, I want to commend the CS, Mr. Speaker, because I went to his office personally, and we discussed issues about Kagumo, and so far, the OCS who had overstayed has so far left the station, and even the OCS for another area in Kanyekine called Mutito, who has also left. On the other question, there were a number of as the CS is saying, there were serious criminals, especially in the Kagumo area. They were breaking into businesses, and this was immediately after the elections. But I want to confirm that this has so far gone down, and we are happy with the work we are doing, Bwana CS. I don't have any other question. I thank you.
Yes, those are just comments. Kikaria.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I want to thank Waziri for the information that he has given, and I want to confirm. It is true, the activities of the confirmed gang has been brought down by not even 60%, almost to 70%. Honorable Speaker, I can confirm we don't have even a single death in the last 1.5 months. But my question that I want to ask Waziri on this confirmed gang, Honorable Speaker, is that maybe, I don't know if he has a record of the number of deaths caused by these knife wielding gangs, because they carry a knife always, and they strike using the knife, including 2 of our very good rugby players who lost their lives around 3 months ago. So maybe if he has a number of the deaths which have been caused by this criminal gang. Secondly, phones are involved, because whenever they strike, they get your phone. And the people who are attacked normally report to the police station for police to be able to follow up on these phones. Then, and that would be a better way of following a phone that has been stolen, and you can be able to reach to the people who committed that crime. And maybe the reports which have been done, how many phones have been recovered in the process, so that they can be able to arrest the people. Either even if you bought a phone, then you must have bought it from somebody, then you give that information. Lastly,
Thank you. That's enough. Okay, give him the mic. One supplementary, Kithure.
yes, the very last one. Honorable Speaker, is about police officers. The station where this, because the operations of Confirm is normally on the southern part where we have a police station called Bondeni. And that police station, Honorable Speaker, is notorious about the police officers who collude with these criminal gangs to be able, I've heard they just change the command, but they leave the actual policemen who have become, so what action other than the command at the station? Because the police officer who has come now, the OCS, is doing a tremendous work. So what happens to the officers under him, who are the main culprits who are involved in collusion with this gang? And the very last one is, if I have information,
No, I'll give the floor to Honorable Mawade. Honorable Gikari, you have had 3 bites.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I want to thank the CS for having appeared here today so that we can be able to exchange with him, or rather answer our questions. First of all, I want to ask the Bwana CS, are you aware that on Thursday, March the 30th, a 17-year-old high school student by the name Master Ezekiel Macau of Double Vision Secondary School was shot at Pipeline Estate, a resident of Pipeline Estate. On the same day, also, a 16-year-old boy by the name Master Stephen Mwau Muthusi was hit with a tear gas canister on the head, admitted at Kenyatta National Hospital, and succumbed to the injuries and taken to the city mortuary, burial permit number 0416790 at the city mortuary. And what are we doing about the officers that shot these 2 young individuals? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Women Rep is Siolo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mine is a very specific question that concerns the commitments made by the Cabinet Secretary during his visit to Isiolo County on matters in security. First of all, I would like to thank him for making an effort to go to specific places where we've been having a challenge with insecurity along the border. That is Garissa, Wajir, and Samburu area, where it's becoming a security hotspot. We may be enjoying a relative peace at the moment because of the drought situation that has existed before, but now we are getting out of that with the blessings of the rain. Most expected scenario will be, there will be hate will be deceiving. So my question Cabinet Secretary is to speak to the specific commitment you made in the area called Mlango, bordering Samburu County, an area called Yamicha, bordering Wajir County, and an area called Korbesa, bordering Garissa County, where we've had so many people killed and a lot of livestock taken. You promised you'll put up a formed unit there. It could be a buffer zone where you ensure that such kind level of killings will not happen in the future. Where are we with that? Secondly, on the issue of KPR.
One at a time, I gave you an
KPR, Mr. Speaker, I'm finishing. On the issue of KPR, that could be very useful to our people. Where are we on that in the case of Isiolo? And for your criteria for operationalizing the sub-counties, the 80 sub-counties, could you also add the level of insecurity as one of the criteria to be considered to let counties be operationalized in that order? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Kamket.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that the appearance of the CS today in Parliament should be the beginning of our return constitutionally to the old system where Cabinet Secretaries are members of Parliament. Because indeed, we have been speaking to each other as Parliament without the presence of executive.
Honourable Kamket, I've given you an opportunity to ask a supplementary
yes,
question
I
or
am,
make a speech.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you will indulge me because earlier on, some issues were raised about even my constituency. But I would like to ask the Cabinet Secretary, number one, could the Cabinet Secretary consider reviewing the curfew orders to exclude trading centers that are, in order not to lose the largely peaceful populations, the trading centers in my constituency? Number two, Mr. Speaker, given that so far there has been no policing value or even deterrence value of roadblocks, could the Cabinet Secretary consider reducing the roadblocks to make them as friendly as possible so as not to marginalize further the marginalized constituency of Tiati? And finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this floor to invite the Cabinet Secretary very politely to Tiati. I have seen him looking at Tiati from binoculars in some instances. I would like to invite him and take a visit, and perhaps he will come back with a better view of that marginalized constituency. There are, finally, sorry, Speaker, there are some gazetted administrative units, and there are others which we have proposed in order to bring government as close to the people as possible. And could he make a commitment on the floor on whether that is going to be done in the shortest time possible, including the Tiati Central Sub-County? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Saidi Poster. Give the mic to member for Galole.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, Tana River leaders had a meeting with the CS about 2 months ago. And in that meeting, the CS promised to give NPR from Tana River guns. But we have not seen those guns up to now. I want the CS to tell us when we are getting those guns. Tana River borders Lamu, and you know Lamu is a very volatile area in terms of security issues. So when are we getting those guns for our NPR. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Zamzam.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Mimi nina swali kwa waziri. Kwanza nikupongeze kuja leo bungeni kutusikiza. Na swali langu linaenda hivi. Ikiwa sisi kina mama tunazalia watoto wetu hospitalini, kisha tunapewa ile notification, na kisha baada ya hapo kupata birth certificate ya mtoto inakuwa ni shida. Mimi nauliza kwa nini usitufanyie wepesi pale pale hospitali, iwe mtoto akizaliwa anamaliziwa pale pale anapata birth certificate hospitali. Na kisha nikiangalia upande wa Pwani tunapata shida sana kupata certificate, na sisi tumekuwa marginalized muda mrefu. Mimi nataka niulize kwa nini nakuwa Mpwani ama yule wa North Eastern anaambiwa lazima alete birth certificate ya babu, ya nyanya, ya nani, wakati ni Mkenya, pengine wale wazazi walikuwa mababu walikuwa hana hiyo. Hiyo imetusumbua sana katika Pwani, na tunauliza kama waziri utasaidia vipi wakazi wa Pwani na kina mama kwenye birth certificate. Asante sana.
Mama Zamzam, hilo swali tulimalizana nalo zamani sana. Sasa tuko na swali la mageng ya uhalifu. Mupe, ilikuwa inakuasha?
Hilo swali limenuasha kwa sababu ndio utata ulioko ndani ya Pwani, kwa hiyo sikupata mwanya, nimepitilizia hapo. Asante Bwana Spika.
Asante mami. Yes, Honorable. Yes. Ni Professor. Okay. Yes, ask your question, Mr.
Asante. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is on the same. Igembe Central, we were promised NPRs. The guns were promised. So far, we've not got any. And the area also is marginalized. Insecurity cases are very high. Drug trafficking from the centers around Kithure. This issue has been discussed. We requested that that place be moved into a police station. Nothing has been done. Also, this area where there is a lot of insecurity, where we requested for the GSU camp, we have not received the results or the report. Could the Minister please respond on that and advise the way forward? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.